Good afternoon, everybody, and thanks, Steffi, for the very kind words. Thanks for having us. I would say, as we only have 20 minutes, let's jump right into it. And let me kick it off maybe with the local champion, ProSiebenSat.1. You are leading a firm in a market where not just in the traditional media space, but also in the digital media space, there's lots to talk about. You're going against Amazon Prime, you're going against Netflix, you're going against ARD and ZDF Mediathek in your German market, you're going in the future against Disney+. But the title says Netflixation of the media industry, but is Netflix really the enemy?
No, not really. Netflix is, they're doing a great job, for sure. And Netflix is just a symbol of what's going on in the markets. All of our, ways how we consume media has changed. But it's all complementary. It's never an either and or. And I always like to kick off these type of discussions by trying to dissect the truth from the myth. So I count a little bit more than 10 that we're still watching TV. But let's not forget something. What we're doing, what traditional broadcasters are doing, is we're serving everyone out there. Like, for example, more than 45 million households in the German-speaking markets. And the truth today is that linear video consumption is still 5 times as much as nonlinear consumption. So what I'm trying to say is, while I'm not sitting on an ice block drifting towards the Caribbean and ignoring that it's getting hotter out there, it's you have to adapt. You have to adapt to the current situation. So we're not really going against all these players. We're going our own way. Our own way is certainly more local, more live content. We're also embracing, and I think in our market we've been the first ones that really embraced digitization. We started our own VOD service in 2005 already. We are today only making 50% of our revenues through classical advertising. The rest is very digital. We founded our own multi-channel network that's generating more than 10 billion monthly video views, and we started Join, as you I think mentioned, and we're now at 7 million monthly users on Join. So we don't see anything out there as a threat. We have only very limited content overlap. For example, with a platform like Netflix, we see this as a great time to be a media company. And our role in the future is actually going to be more and more important, because the real, if you want to talk in these terms, enemy or challenger are not Disney+, not Amazon Prime, not Netflix, not the public broadcasters who are doing a lot of stuff together. They are on Join, by the way. It's the social media platforms and what they are doing to society and also to the advertising markets.
Justin, your situation is slightly different, but same industry. You are in many parts of the world the global business news leader, but eyeballs are also moving. They're moving away from your terminals, from your TV channels, to new outlets, to new channels. So is it also a great time for you to be a media company?
Well, Bloomberg is distinguished by being a completely multi-platform global media company that operates all across the world, across print, across digital, across television, across live events, across radio and audio on every continent. We've adopted a strategy which is maybe slightly different, which is we've accepted and faced the reality that the vast majority of our existing channels are in decline, that consumers are moving away from them, that advertisers are moving away from them, and that actually the first step in reinventing our company in a very aggressive and ongoing way is to accept the fact that your current portfolio of assets are actually under attack and probably will not be able to respond as effectively as possible. And then the second step in this process is to say, well, listen, where actually are the audiences going? Where are the commercial models going? And why don't we immediately jump into all those different markets where there are what I call media tailwinds? Because there are media headwinds we talk about a lot, but there are actually parts of the media sector that are full of excitement and full of opportunity and full of disruption. And so what we've done across the last couple of years is launched multiple new businesses that actually exist in the new part of media, the growing part of the media, where it's not doom and gloom, and in fact you can actually unseat other market leaders that are traditional with using the assets that you have from your core business. So one example for us, obviously Bloomberg Television is a global TV asset. We've got bureaus in 130 countries. We have 3,000 journalists around the world. So we are uniquely positioned to actually launch a digital video product for social media because we can tap into all those resources, those news gathering resources. And so we launched something called, actually we first launched it called TikTok. And this was before the Chinese TikTok came in. And they sort of won the brand war with us on that one. But we rebranded it, it's called Quick Take. And it basically is a 24/7 global, very high quality premium video news channel that lives on Twitter and lives on YouTube and lives on Facebook. And it's now has a very big global audience, 100 million views, and it's seeing huge growth both in audience and also in commercialization.
You both mentioned social media as the platforms to watch and where the growth is. I understand that, but isn't that giving away the right to curate the content? Because social media platforms, they feed you. Any platform feeds you what they believe is the right content for you to keep you on the platform. And if you now go with your content to where the eyeballs are and they do the curation, isn't then a critical element of journalism given away?
Well, I think we're not giving away anything in the first place. Yeah? Social media is something that's very important for all of us. But at the same time, I think people, and that's what we're seeing, have more and more interest in being informed and knowing what's going on around me. The world has become very, very complicated. And that's essentially, I think, where classical media, or you guys jump in and come in, curation, separating fake from truth, giving context, giving a narrative, is one of the big assets that these purely algorithm platforms cannot provide to people. I like to say in German, der Algorithmus, das mathematisierte Vorurteil. The algorithm is basically prejudice put under mathematics. Yeah? And that's dangerous. We see some very dangerous effects on this one. And that's why we're seeing an increasing demand of people, and I'm sure you do the same on a global basis, of wanting to know what's going on around me and trying to grab a straw that tells me, am I in the right context or am I in the wrong context? That's why we've launched a news channel in Austria this last year. A linear news channel, but it also has a very strong nonlinear app component where people can follow the things that are going on outside on a personalized basis.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I think the reality is that you have to go where the audiences are, and the audiences are on social platforms. And you have to then analyze the experience, the consumer experience that people have on these social platforms, let's say in the case of news. And in many instances, it's not an ideal experience. I mean, sort of the full waterfall Twitter feed, which is what most news junkies in the world is now their primary news platform, is not a very organized, curated. You follow individuals, you follow brands, but it's extremely sort of disjointed. And the opportunity that we saw, for instance, with Quick Take, and I think many quality content providers can develop, is actually to create very, very high quality content that is deeply curated and then place it on the social platforms and then have that content compete with the disjointed, less vetted, less curated, less edited content that it actually is going to sit alongside. And ultimately, I see a lot more innovation happening between quality content providers and social media platforms where these joint efforts to use their distribution and our content creation skills will actually yield some new businesses. Twitter happens to be the one social platform that was much more open to doing this than Facebook and others, but I think over time, as the platforms are forced, I think, to play more fairly with content players, these sorts of partnerships will become more popular.
Right. I mean, if I may chip in here, it's what's been the greatest change in the last years in terms of media information? It's not a platform like Netflix or Prime or maybe Disney Plus in the future. It's actually the smartphone and the tablet, and by that a total power shift from those who are providing content to those, i.e. all of us, who are consuming content. And it would be the wrongest thing you could do in media and in business, by the way, not to go along with your followers and your people, the customers. So you kind of have to adapt to that, and that's what we're trying to do on an everyday basis. When I started in this industry 20 years ago, it was very simple. We were a broadcasting company. Today, we are amongst others broadcasters, but we make 50% of our revenues through all sorts of digital businesses, and we use streaming, for example. Over the top is one of the big future topics for us to reach the people out there, besides the classic distribution means.
When we talk about younger audiences consuming your content on the private side, but also business news, content gets shorter and shorter, right? Attention span and the formats, especially on the social media, is kind of like preparing people for short, snackable content. And isn't there a risk that the people you are training on short-form content will not go back to the real journalism, which is more in the long-form content space when they grow up, or don't you see that?
Well, I think there's a macro trend of the erosion of attention spans caused by short-form content, but I do still think that short-form content is very specific to smartphone consumption, which equals social media consumption to a large extent. Now, with the whole, obviously, with the whole revolution that's taking place in OTT, we're going to go from social sort of clips, if you will, to actually a whole new ecosystem of streaming longer-form content. I think you're going to see those same audiences when they're actually connected to a smart television device in their living rooms, in their offices, actually begin to migrate to longer form, more explanatory, more analytical content or entertainment-based content, because in that media platform, in that media format, the longer form makes a lot more sense. I mean, it's just like the way sort of consuming a longer form article on a tablet is much more effective than on a smartphone. So I do think overall attention spans are eroding, but I think that short form content is specific to mobile experiences, and long form will find different venues as the technology continues.
It is really never an either or, but it's always an and. Let me give you an example. When we launched Join last year, we found out, and that trend is, or that stat is still valid as per today, that half of the usage of a streaming platform is linear. And the majority of content on Join is what consumed on a big screen. And it has a very young audience. And just one specific example, last summer, on a Monday evening, we aired a very heavy documentary on sustainability. It was called Save the Oceans. Our biggest competitor was a comedy show on RTL, which was a big star that usually creates huge audiences. And we were actually baffled. We hadn't expected this. We made more than 11% market share, more than 3 million people, mostly young people, were using that. So I fully concur. There's a time and a device for short content, but long form and narrative and context will always be of interest for the people.
When you both produce content on both sides, private sector and business news, do you produce specifically from the get-go for multiple channels today? Or is it really that you buy it from somewhere, produce it, and then you kind of like give it to a team that chops it, depending on the channel, it's wrapped in different packages?
Well, both, obviously, right? Okay. But with Studio 71, for example, it's digital and online-only content, which creates, as said, 10 billion video views a month. It's huge numbers, yeah? Also, we do our own productions for Join, but we also do, the traditional, because that's still the majority of the use case is still out there, long form for linear and TV. It's the mistake that we've made in the past is to really try to do something online first only, and that kind of didn't work. So you have to be really flexible in how you do that. It's across the board.
Quick take the same?
No, our experience is a little bit different. I mean, I think that from the very beginning of digital, when we were transitioning from offline to online desktop, and then desktop to mobile, and then mobile to social, I think every time you use the same resources, the same talent, and the same kind of experience to create content in the new medium, you generally were importing an old-fashioned and different and disconnected kind of approach to the new mediums. And I think that as these mediums have grown, I believe that a common thread has been, if you want to compete effectively on the next medium, you need to identify content creation skills and talent that is specific to that medium, and actually not allow the traditional content creators to think overnight just because it's now their responsibility that they now are a native digital editor. So it makes it a lot more expensive, obviously, because you need sort of specific content creators for each platform. I think once you've got a large enough organization, you can then begin to sort of reverse engineer. And now we're, I think, 20 plus years into the digital revolution. I think digital skills are becoming a little bit more ubiquitous, and you're not dealing with the same issues we had 10 years ago or so.
When it comes to commercializing the content, you're planning with Join Plus, right? But is that more of an additional revenue stream, or do you see that as a major revenue stream similar to other models?
Well, I would like to say it like this: we're in streaming for the long haul. Obviously, I'm not aware of any streaming platform to date that's generating major profits. For us, it's more about reach. Yeah, it delivers us a good, solid addition of reach that we market. Our monetization model is primarily media inventory to sell that. And on that, we're seeing a very good, very promising development also on Join. But it goes into the whole, the whole package of reach that we sell, and it is complementary. We'll stay flexible. We have to see where the market takes us. Still, the classic means of distribution, cable, satellite, terrestrial, are very strong for us, and we value the business we make with our partners, and we're making for decades now. And Join streaming is one, I would say, of our three strategic future pillars, so it's super important.
On your end, you have a very dynamic paywall in place to protect your online content. Of course, you have the terminals, and still advertising is huge. So what's the story there?
Well, I mean, we did launch a subscription business 18 months ago. I think the business and financial media space is fortunate in that subscription models appear for some premium, high-quality content brands to be working quite well. The Wall Street Journal, the Financial Times, even startups like the Axel Springer-owned Business Insider now has 200,000 subscriptions. So I think reader revenue for professional content and for very few high-end, premium quality content businesses in the news space can work. But it's not ubiquitous at all. And I think digital advertising, we were saying before, I think it's at least in the US context, I think there was a sense a while ago that maybe the acceleration of the technology platforms' domination of digital advertising might slow down a little bit. I think the last second half of 2019 dispelled those views. I think you're seeing, even despite the brand issues, the trust issues, the regulatory sort of oversight, et cetera, you're seeing an acceleration of the market share gain. So I think what successful media companies must do in the face of this landscape is just to continuously invent new businesses, new brand extensions that actually are, as I said earlier, that benefit from consumer and business model tailwinds and get out as quickly as possible from the spaces where you're facing the challenges.
All right, our 20 minutes are already coming to an end. DLD slots are quite short. There's lots more that we could discuss, but maybe one last question, brief answer. How much of you will we see on TikTok, the one from ByteDance, not your former brand?
My children just missed the TikTok revolution, so I was just more worried about the fact that we had branded something in a similar way, and we had a fraction of their users, and I needed to convince my boss that we had to change the name.
All right.
Well, we're about, and this is a little bit advertising, of course, because I'm in the business, we're about to launch season 15 of Germany's Next Top Model on TV, on Join, and on the other TikTok.
Excellent. Justin, Konrad, many thanks for the 20 minutes with us. Highly appreciate it. Thanks, everybody, and have a great rest of DLD.
Thank you.